was just talking with a old colleague of mine who's a kind of senior supply chain executive at a big specialty retailer, and I kind of asked him, how is it affecting them, because they've got a lot of China sourcing going on, like a lot of folks do. And they're in a growth mode. They just stood up a DC. They've got another one that's sort of in the works. So they can wait on things. So there's some caution in the planning, but you can't wait too long, because those are long. Standing up a DC is a long lead time. But you got to kind of continue to So we talked about you got to continue to run your business. You can't just get paralyzed. Right, because you got to keep moving forward. But yet there are, like, if China starts to shift to India, then that just that changes things, right, in terms of your logistics. You might have a segment of stores or a geography where some item really takes off versus not so much. You can have seasonal differences with things, obviously, with where the weather gets colder earlier or later, so you got to think about those things. And but then because once you put it into the store, it's not stranded, but it's more expensive to move it around. Do you have an option from that store to execute a store-based e-commerce fulfillment? You might, and that gives you another lever, or you might not. You might have to, transship it somewhere else if it's just truly not selling.
Look at the profit section and how you read and interpret and make decisions here. If I were looking at just what's the best margin percentage, e-com has 16.4. That's pretty attractive. But if you look at dollar profit, and in the year I put dollars into the bank, wow, I got to rethink retailers, because there's $1 billion in standard profit, and then I think net profit goes along in terms of the importance there. 200 million in net profit versus 11 for e-commerce. So if I need, I've got some choices to make there.
When I was at Limited, we talk about buy side and sell side. Buy side was sort of everything, all things supply chain, right? It was sort of the plan, make, move, return cycle, the whole bit. We had a leader who was kind of famous for saying, cost is, almost always irrelevant. Right? That was kind of, it's like about what your assortment is, and your, how well you're sort of getting out there in the marketplace with, for a fashion retailer, that's important. But you can't ignore the buy side stuff, and you can't just say, well, okay, just because I can't get, and this just came up on my recent conversation, just because I can't get container capacity, then I'm going to shift to air freight, right? I got to get everything in. Well, that's not going to work. Yeah, you'll have it there on time, and it'll be the cost profile will just destroy everything. So that gets into, competitive insights and what y'all do so well, and looking at things. So you got to, there's a lot of variables you got to sort of manage, in at the same time, and that's kind of the devil is in the details part of this.